everyone. I'm very honored to be here with you all today, the students of one of the finest institutes of India. I started with my journey as an engineer too, but truth to be told, I was very disappointed that I could not make it to IIT. And I had this extreme pressure because my elder brother was an IITian. Anyways, I'm here with you today, not as an engineer, but as a photographer, as a storyteller, and a National Geographic Explorer. It was around 2016 when I was looking for an escape from my job and the concrete city of Mumbai, and I happened to travel to Uttarakhand. And in one of my solitary walks, I saw a stone house, a tiny house. And then I walked up the house and then I knocked the door and I saw two teenager girls. Their name was Manisha and Babita. At that time, they were aged 10 and 13. So I spent a lot of time with them exploring the forest, waterfalls, and all the wilderness around. And it was such a beautiful heaven that we all became children once again. And now one would think that life in the mountain is so beautiful. There's greenery, there's fresh air around. But as I spent more and more time with them, I realized how difficult their life was. And when I said that I spent some time, I'm talking about 5 years. I realized that they were mostly living in this small, tiny room filled with smoke. That is the room where they were cooking, they were studying, and they were sleeping. And they were expected to do a lot more work than a teenage should be expected. They were already behaving like women. They were taking care of their siblings. They were taking care of cooking. They were also fetching fodder and wood from the forest. But the most difficult part of their daily chore was bringing water for the entire family and for the animals as well. So they would go deep in the forest to find these natural water sources. And as I followed in their journey along with them, I realized as the summer passed by and as the heat grew, their job was becoming more and more difficult. They have to go deeper in the forest to find the new sources of the water. And I was very moved by that. I was very impacted by that. So I started visiting more villages around and also other districts. And what I found is the story was more or less same. It was a repeated thing that teenagers were spending a lot of time in fetching the water, and that is why they were missing schools. They had severe pain and in the head and the shoulder because of all the heavy lifting of the water. And there were other social issues which were recurrent. And I met another girl named Deepa. In 2018, she was 17 and she was very ambitious. She wanted to go to college, but the same year she got married. And that's the story of her sister as well. So I realized that a lot of these social issues were also all pointing towards the gender biases in the region. So the environmental issue, the water crisis is a problem, but when you combined it with the local issues of gender and patriarchal, it was becoming more and more complex for me to understand. And this is the picture in one of the villages in Pithoragarh district. And that is how the girls were spending their Sunday. They would go to one of the water source and they will wash their clothes and the family's clothes and take a bath there and then again fetch water, take 4 and 5 rounds. And the stories were just repeating wherever I went, and I really explored the area, the Kumaon area, the Garhwal area. But the one difference I realized, the villages where there was access of water, the girls had slightly different life, a better life I would say, because now they were able to save that time and they were actually able to go to school. They had more time for their personal development. They also had more time for their leisure, like how the life should be. And that gave me slight hope that, what can be done. And I talked to one of the girls, who was very independent. She was able to take care of their family as well. So there was a hope that, if the basic needs are completed, they can live a better life. As per the National Commission of Women, a woman in rural India spends 6 to 9 hours to fetch the water in their water, to get the water for the family. And that amount of time is really way, it's a lot when you think about everyone, every woman has to spend 8 to 9 hours every day to get this water. And this task becomes even more difficult when you think about the terrain in Uttarakhand. There are hills, there are mountains, there's forest. So it becomes extremely difficult and physically very difficult task. And the other problem is that the women are often being attacked by leopard also. So it's very unsafe for them. Now, when we think about water crisis and the issue itself, we don't think about Uttarakhand. What comes in our mind is more drought-prone areas like Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, those areas which are known to be drought-prone area. Uttarakhand has 16 rivers crisscrossing the region. So there is plenty of water in the region, but because of the geography of the region, it's not possible for the villagers to fetch water from the river directly. And then of course, as we know, the water from the region goes to the neighboring cities and the bigger cities and the metropolitan. So there's of course unequal distribution of natural resources there. Now, this problem wasn't such a big problem until 2 to 3 decades ago. There were natural springs and aquifers which are called Nola and Dharas in local language. So when you see the photo over here, there is this temple body which is basically a Nola known in the local language. It's a sacred space. So a woman would go in the morning, she will lit a lamp there, she will worship the space and fetch the water. So that used to maintain the sanctity of the place as well. But now these nolas and dharas are drying because the groundwater level is going down each day. Of course, now the lack of the water on these nolas now creating conflict among the villagers, and there are of course fights and quarrels. And this is how the Nola looks like. It's spring and of course there's a stairwell structure which keeps the water clean. So why are these Nolas and Dharas are drying? And I know the most obvious reason, as we know, is the climate change and climate crisis. But there are many other local issues which are very specific to the region. And one of the biggest one is the wildfires. And the wildfires is happening every season in the dry season. Most of the time the cause is natural cause, but sometimes the farmer want to clear the earth and they have a controlled wildfire, and then it gets aggravated by the pine needles. So pine needles, which is known as perul in the local language, it acts as a fuel to aggravate the fire, which is very bad for the groundwater level. And pine forest itself is not a great species when it comes to water retention. When you compare pine forest with other local species like oak or rhododendron, pine doesn't have the same water capacity retention, and as a species, it does not allow any other species to grow around. And as for the locals, pine was brought by the Britishers at that time to meet their need of the wood. So what's happening now, the pine forest is covering the 70% of the area, and the forest department understands and acknowledges the problem, but they don't have an immediate solution for it. So when I tried to find more about the pine and how it's impacting the groundwater level, I realized that it's not only affecting the springs and the nolas, it's also affecting the small rivers. Now these small rivers are spring-fed rivers, so their origin is basically spring, and when the springs are dying, these small rivers are dying as well. And the small rivers are very important for the villagers because the water of these small rivers can actually be diverted and made a water path for it to be reached to the fields and the agriculture. And that is why there are many villages which are settled around small rivers. So one of the rivers which is very important is Kosi River, which is situated in the in the valley of Kosi, and I'm sure you might have heard about the Kausani city. So Kosi River is been dying, and it is something which is very alarming. And in my research, I found one of the local geologists, Dr. J.S. Rawat. He has been researching about Kosi River and how it is drying since 2003. And as per his data, it used to be 222 kilometer long just 4 decades ago, and now it is just 41.5 kilometer. So the data is really shocking, and what he says that if we do not take an immediate action, it could be completely drying in next 1 or 2 decades. So when I asked more about like what can be done and what's the solution for this, so he says that the river origins from the spring, and there are recharge zones from where the water come, and if there's a way that more those recharge zone can be recharged by the rainwater, then there's a possibility that these rivers can be rejuvenated. Now the problem is that of course there's so much rain, and I'm sure all of you would have seen those viral videos as well, that there's so much flood in Uttarakhand and in Himachal, in other areas of North India. But the intensity of the rain is not good for the locals and for the environment, because the rains are very intense. It comes in the form of cloud busting, and a lot of water just overflows. It does not percolate in the earth. That is why it does not help in raising the groundwater level. So what he suggests, that if there is a way that the trenches and the hole can be made on those recharge zone, then the water level can increase eventually, and maybe these rivers can be saved. And it is just not about Kosi. There are many other small rivers which is all around Uttarakhand, and many people dependent on the water of those rivers. But the thing here is that he knows the solution and what needs to be done, but there is no particular department which is allocated for the work of rejuvenating the rivers. So Dr. J.S. Rawat, though he has worked so much, he feels very helpless that his work is not going any further from that. But the interesting thing is that, one story reaches from one place to another place. When he published this small news in a local newspaper, the story reached to another local social worker who was living in Kausani Valley, in Kausani at that time, and she knows how important Kosi River is. And her name is Basanti Ben. She is local activist, and she, along with her mentor, Radha Ben, they went from house to house, from village to village, to raise awareness about the dying Kosi River. So they collected a group of 200 women who would raise awareness about the river, but also educate people that do not cut the trees. If you need something like wood or fodder, just take what you need, but do not cut the trees. She also raised awareness that how we need more broadleaf trees in the area, and how pine forest is not that great. So just plant more broadleaf trees. And her movement got really big, and of course it helped the cause. And I was very glad to know that last year she was awarded Padma Shri Award, and her efforts were recognized by the government. And that's Kosi River in the summertime when the flow is very low. So interestingly, in Uttarakhand, women have always led this very iconic environmentalist movement, and one of the most iconic one was Chipko Andolan, which was in 1970, initiated by Gaura Devi and her cohort. So the story goes by that when a constructor came and he wanted to cut their forest illegally, she and her cohort, which is around again 100 of women, they hugged the trees, and they did not let the contractor do her work. And that movement became so iconic that even today, all around the world, people save the trees by hugging them. So while women have been in the forefront of saving the trees and the river, they are also the one who had to bear this weight of the water. So today, I want to leave you all with the story of Basanti Ben, Manisha and Babita, and also many other young girls whose future is at stake because of the water crisis. And I could relate to this story, I could empathize to the story because I grew up in a place where I see gender biases and patriarchy all around me. I was raised by a single mother. So for me, it became very important to leave my job and tell these meaningful stories. And today here as a storyteller, I hope that you take this story somewhere further because it's every storyteller's dream to find the right audience. And I can't think of a better audience for this story. People who are excelling in the technology as well as very well versed with the modern issues. So please, when you go back, think about this and hope that you carry it forward because we all are the medium and the show must go on. Thank you.